Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. Hey everyone, thank you for joining this webinar. I'm Rishi, Principal Product Manager at Sumo Logic, responsible for solutions, apps, and partner integrations. And today I'm delighted to have Sandeep Kashyap from Amazon Web Services join me for this exciting presentation on achieving multi-account observability with AWS Control Tower and Sumo Logic. So a couple of housekeeping notes. This webinar will be recorded and will be available on the Sumo Logic website. Feel free to send your questions over the chat and we'll address them as we go through the presentation. We have our two panelists, Cher and Basham, who will be answering the questions on the chat, and Sandeep and I will chime in at the end of the presentation and answer any other unanswered questions. Okay. So the agenda for today is Sandeep will first introduce us to what AWS Control Tower is and the kinds of challenges it solves and recommended best practices. He will then go into specifics around what Control Tower landing zones and lifecycle events are and how they can be used by you as well as partners like Sumo Logic. I will then talk about how Sumo Logic integrates with AWS Control Tower and how our new AWS Observability solution can be used for unified visibility across all of your AWS environments. We'll then answer any questions you may have. Okay, with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sandeep Kashyap from Amazon Web Services.
Thanks, Rishi, and good morning, everyone, and thanks for joining today's webinar. Just as any family or somebody starting a new home would, come across challenges while building their home, something that's most critical to a new family starting a home or to a business is building the foundation. Many times they start from scratch and build their foundations ground up, and many times they move into foundations that are pre-built. Pretty much similar to how a business would start off as well, whether this founding the business or they're managing the infrastructure, especially in terms of technology. One thing that is common to either the house that you're living in or the business that you're starting is a strong architecture. And a critical aspect of that architecture is the foundational components that give it stability, as well as the different aspects that provide each and every business a separate location to build in, right? Similar to how we have in our houses, everybody needs their own rooms, and there are dedicated rooms to either park your cars or cook your food and so on. It wouldn't make sense to have everything co-located in the same place. And that's kind of what AWS Control Tower provides for an enterprise that is starting to build their foundation in the cloud. Right? What Control Tower offers you is a well-architected landing zone that lets you, build a baseline on top of which you can create more AWS accounts that can be used to host different types of workloads. So let's dive a little bit into what the landing zone is. A landing zone is a multi-account governance framework which consists of multiple services that work together to enable an organization to build a scalable orchestration framework. Let's start with AWS organizations. AWS organizations is a service that consists of foundational components such as an organizations unit and AWS accounts. An organizations unit is a policy unit that lets you apply policies that define or govern the behavior of users inside the AWS accounts where workloads are located. So with regard to the landing zone that is created by Control Tower, AWS organizations is enabled and two organization units are created, the core organization unit and the custom organization unit. Inside the core organization unit, there are two accounts, the log archive account and the audit account. The log archive account is your centralized repository for all the config and CloudTrail logs to be stored. And your audit account is like a security hub, which includes a config aggregator, which monitors the security posture in terms of config rules of all the AWS accounts that get created and are being monitored by the detective guardrails. It also consists of SMS notifications that are used to send emails to administrators if there is a violation of a detective guardrail. Control Tower also includes the concept of an account factory, which is enabled by AWS Service Catalog. So instead of having to go into AWS organizations, create an account, and then apply a baseline security posture by way of security policies, config rules, and so on, customers can leverage the account factory, which gives them a one-screen interface to enroll a brand new or an existing account into Control Tower and enable that account with all the security policies or guardrails that Control Tower applies to it. The final part of the landing zone is your AWS single sign-on setup, which enables customers to use or have a single glass of pane for all the users to log into. And the single sign-on directory can further be edited or customized to integrate with third-party identity providers such as Okta, OneLogin, and other identity providers. Customers can then leverage the landing zone to add more accounts, which leverage the baseline security posture that the landing zone offers. So what do you get when you set up Control Tower? You get a landing zone in just 1 hour without having to write even a single line of code. Right? Along with this landing zone, you get 40 guardrails out of the box. These guardrails are a mix of preventive security controls, which are service control policies, and detective security controls, which are config rules. The preventive security controls restrict any undesirable changes into the AWS environments. And the detective security controls make sure to detect any change in configuration that organizations may want to track. For example, if somebody changes or opens a port that the organization has decided that should not be opened, for example, an SSH port, the detective guardrails would notify that and present them on the dashboard. We already talked about the account factory that is enabled by Control Tower. It can be used to create new AWS accounts using inside Control Tower, as well as to enroll existing accounts into Control Tower. We have the built-in identity and access, and the pre-configured log archive and the audit access accounts. I do want to call it out that a couple of years back, before automated solutions such as the AWS landing zone or Control Tower were not available, it did take a couple of weeks or even months for customers to build their foundation and then start to build more accounts on top of it. Added to that fact was the amount of code that they had to write and continue to maintain, causing them to spend a lot of effort on something that was not giving them too much of benefit in terms of their business needs, but was a huge tech debt that they had to go to maintain on an ongoing basis. And that's what Control Tower really looks at solving for the customers, that not only does it reduce the time for a customer to set up their baseline foundation or create new accounts, it also reduces the tech debt and the code maintenance that is required on an ongoing basis. Now, once your landing zone is set up, what customers get is an automated, scalable, and self-service governance framework that organizations can use to expand or scale workloads across their organization. I'll briefly touch upon the topic of a multi-account framework that customers can use to build organizations. The most foundational to this framework is the concept of foundational organization units. AWS recommends that customers should create AWS accounts inside an organization unit where the traffic is minimal. So for that purpose, we would recommend that you create a security account where, similar to the log archive account, where you could aggregate all the logs, create security roles which could be read-only or read-write for auditors to assume and then log into the child accounts to perform any maintenance activities. Additionally, customers can also choose to deploy security third-party tools that enable them to build a stronger security posture in their accounts. On similar lines, we would recommend that you can choose to create an infrastructure account which could host shared services such as networking appliances. And as I earlier mentioned, the access or the traffic into these accounts should be limited as much as possible. Customers can also choose then to create organization units and accounts depending upon the end user persona. For example, if organizations want their teams and engineers to experiment and innovate, they can create sandbox accounts, and they can apply AWS budgets and limit the spending in these accounts. Also, these accounts can be disconnected from the network so that any experimentation does not have any impact on workloads which could be hosting production applications. Right? The entire intent is that these organization units and workloads are isolated from each other and are granted access to only the people who are required to use it. So while the organization units act as policy units, the accounts act as resource containers and take care of multiple aspects such as reducing the blast radius and managing the service limits for each of the services that are running inside these accounts, and enabling segregation to allow for easier management of security policies or regulatory compliance roles. This simplifies the management because if you were to put regulatory compliances on top of workloads which exist in the same account, such as sandbox workloads, it would make it a lot more complicated on how an organization would differentiate between these two workloads. Now, I do want to highlight that AWS Control Tower can be used by brand new customers to set up their AWS foundation and start to build on top of it. And not only by brand new customers, Control Tower can be used by existing customers also, where they will build the landing zone as a part of their existing master pair account. So many customers may have their foundational organization units created in their account, as well as many workloads in one or more than one account. When you set up Control Tower in an existing master pair account, the landing zone that Control Tower builds will be created separate to that of their existing workloads. Control Tower will not impact any of their existing workloads. And once Control Tower is set up in your existing master account, customers can choose to enroll their existing workloads and move them under the management of AWS Control Tower. Now, once Control Tower is set up, your baseline is set up, and you start to create more accounts. Is that sufficient? Well, apparently not. And that's what a lot of our customers told us, that once Control Tower is set up and we've got all the accounts also set up, it's like giving a family the keys to a ready-to-move-in house. Well, why is that not sufficient? Because just like a family moves into a new house, they need internet connection. They need their cable TV. They need the appliances so that they can cook their food. Similarly, customers also wanted visibility and control into each and every environment and workload that they wanted to deploy. And not only did they want visibility, they also wanted to automate the entire aspect of integrating security and observability tooling into these accounts. Customers require that they have a centralized or a single pane of glass from where they're able to monitor the security posture and the guardrails and how they're being enforced, right? You would agree that, from the financial industry and the healthcare domain, regulatory and compliance requirements are paramount, right? That is a major demand from our customers in the security space. And finally, customers do not want end users or engineers to be spinning up VPCs or networks randomly in each of the accounts they create. So they require a centralized networking operations hub from where all the network traffic can be routed. These were some of the key demands that we heard from Control Tower customers as we matured it from a preview stage from reInvent of 2018 to GA in June of 2019. And based on this feedback, and before that, as I said, customers would need all the appliances, security, and communications built in before they can start to deploy workloads in their ready to move in environment. So with this feedback, we work with a set of partners to develop solutions that help a customer, start their journey on the cloud. We categorize these solutions into 5 use cases, right? A set of use cases that define the operational readiness for a customer. These include security, identity, and network management. Right? Before anybody would start to live in a house, they want to make sure that the house is secure, right? They are the only ones who have the keys to the house, and they can communicate with the outside world. And that is resonates very well with how customers want to set up their environments in the cloud. Similarly, once your foundation readiness has been established, customers do look at being able to have visibility inside these environments and around all the workloads that they are creating. So we work with these with 11 partners to build a set of 12 secure solutions that are available on AWS Marketplace and that can be integrated into a Control Tower environment. Now, what exactly are these solutions? These solutions are very well-defined implementation guides and code samples that customers can use to integrate third-party solutions into an AWS environment, right? Built by these partners, and at this point, I'll also introduce the solution that has been built by Sumo Logic. This solution consists of a step-by-step guide that a customer can use to set up the Sumo Logic environment, in this case, into their AWS environment and start to gain visibility into their accounts. And this integration also lets them automate the entire process of setting up a Sumo Logic integration within AWS account. As I mentioned, you have an architecture diagram that describes how Control Tower and the governance accounts interact with Sumo Logic, as well as a step-by-step guide, which includes code samples that lets you build that integration as well. Before I hand it over to Rishi, I do want to point out that when you set up the integration with Sumo Logic, it will have access to the centralized logging bucket from where it can read the config and CloudTrail logs, as well as it will have read-only access into each and every account that is created so that it can monitor the CloudWatch logs, as well as all other workloads or any other logs that are required. At this point, I'll pass it on to Rishi to take us through the Sumo Logic capability. Thank you.
Thanks, Sandeep. So now I will talk about how Sumo Logic integrates with AWS Control Tower and how our new AWS Observability solution can be used for unified visibility and fast troubleshooting. Okay. Before I go into the details though, first let me talk a little bit more about Sumo Logic's main strength, which is basically to reduce the time taken to detect, investigate, and resolve operational and security issues. So when you apply those benefits to a multi-account AWS environment that Sandeep talked about, Sumo Logic can help accelerate migrations to the cloud because it provides a scalable operating model that you can use to troubleshoot and resolve issues across all of your AWS accounts, regions, and services. And detecting and resolving these kinds of issues faster allows you to minimize disruptions in both migrating and migrated workloads. And what this does is it helps increase the speed and confidence in the entire migration to the cloud process. So we do this by collecting logs, metrics, and traces from various applications and infrastructure data sources. So your teams, including developers, IT ops, security, support, and business users, can analyze the data for their needs. Okay. So Sumo Logic has a number of out-of-the-box integrations with AWS already. Some of our most popular are CloudTrail, VPC Flow, and ELB. And we've recently announced this new solution, AWS Observability and Root Cause Explorer, which I'm going to talk about in the subsequent slides. Okay. So let's talk about how Sumo Logic and Control Tower work together. So with Control Tower, as Sandeep talked about, our joint customers can set up and configure landing zones and get new AWS accounts created based on best practices. Now with Sumo Logic, you can centralize the monitoring of the AWS services used across all of these accounts through a new AWS Observability solution, which gives unified visibility across accounts, regions, services, and instances of those services. And secondly, through a root cause Explorer add-on, we're able to accelerate incident resolution. Finally, we have CloudFormation templates that help all of this get set up quickly. With this solution, we have support for these services listed out here, but any new services can be added to it as well. Okay, so just a quick note about how this integration works. So you will run this CloudFormation template in each of the AWS accounts that have been created by Control Tower, as well as in the log archive account that is used to aggregate CloudTrail logs across all of your AWS accounts. Right? This CloudFormation template creates resources on both the AWS and the Sumo Logic side so that data is streamed in real time to Sumo Logic. And once it gets into Sumo Logic, you can analyze all of this data via the out-of-the-box AWS Observability dashboards. Okay. Now, the process of getting data from an AWS account to Sumo Logic can also be automated, right? So as Sandeep was talking about, there is a Control Tower account factory that is run, that is a part of the Control Tower master admin account. So using the account factory, when you create a new AWS account, a CloudWatch event, create managed account, is generated, which then triggers our AWS Lambda, Sumo Logic specified AWS Lambda, that adds this account to an existing CloudFormation stack set and goes ahead and runs that CloudFormation template for the account. And what that does is that template enables the streaming of data, all CloudWatch metrics and logs from this account directly to Sumo Logic. So this is all automated without the need for any intervention. Okay. So with that, I'm going to go into a quick demo of how this works. And I'll be back in a second. I'm going to share this demo in a second. And how this works is you would first open up Control Tower, and through the account factory, you'll create a new AWS account and specify various details like account email, display name, SSO username, and so on, as well as associate it with an organizational unit. And when you enroll this account, the account can be, the status of the account is visible in the AWS Service Catalog, where you see finally that the account has been created. Once the account is created, you can go ahead and log into the account via the single sign-on module that Sandeep was talking about earlier. Okay? You can log in as administrator, or you can have organizational access to that account. Okay? Now, as this account has been created, in parallel, what happens is we go ahead and run an Sumo Logic AWS CloudFormation template that is responsible for creating resources on the Sumo Logic and the AWS side in the region specified at initial configuration to automatically stream data to Sumo Logic from this account. Okay. So as this template keeps running, one thing, it's just showing all the resources being created. And one important piece here that I want to quickly highlight is it also pulls out the account name. So when you create an account in Control Tower, you specify a name, and that name is passed on to the Sumo Logic Observability solution. And I will talk about how this is used in our dashboards in the next demo. So as the CloudFormation template goes ahead and runs, and it goes ahead and completes running in each region, the entire operation is then successfully completed, and the streaming of data from that AWS account to Sumo Logic is set up. So as you add new services, Lambdas, RDS, DynamoDB tables, the CloudWatch metrics and logs are automatically streamed from that account to Sumo Logic. And now let me talk about the Sumo Logic AWS solution that is used to analyze this data. Okay. So before I go into the details, I just wanted to quickly highlight the customer challenges that we're trying to solve with the solution. So most of our customers use multiple AWS services that are often dependent on each other. And when there's a production issue, they have to go through a manual process of investigation by running ad hoc metrics and logs queries to figure out the root cause. So as Sandeep mentioned, also AWS recommends that customers create separate accounts for cost management, security, and administrative reasons. But as a result, the operational and security data reside in data silos in AWS account, region, service hierarchies. Now, customers can, of course, develop their own cross-account, cross-region, CloudWatch dashboards, but developing a comprehensive overview of application, AWS service health across various dimensions like CloudTrail logs, CloudWatch metrics can be a time-consuming effort. So with our AWS Observability solution, we aim to address these challenges by unifying the visibility across all of your AWS hierarchies and providing the ability for fast troubleshooting via our machine learning-based Root Cause Explorer add-on. Okay, so with that, I'm going to quickly jump into a demo. Okay. So in this screen, this shows the Sumo Logic console, and specifically a new Explorer feature, Explorer UI interface that helps you navigate through various operational and security data hierarchies. Okay, so in this Explorer interface, we have the AWS Observability menu option, and you see a list of your accounts here. So if you'll remember, I spoke about the Control Tower account name that was passed from Control Tower to Sumo Logic in the CloudFormation template. And the reason for this is our customers wanted to designate their accounts by an account alias as opposed to seeing an account ID, so they could tie that to what that account is being used for, right? As opposed to seeing a numeric AWS account ID. So that's why we pulled in these aliases over here. And as I was saying, this is an automated process. Whatever is supplied when you're creating a Control Tower managed AWS account is automatically pushed through here to Sumo Logic, okay, as the account name. And the first thing you see when you select any one of the accounts is an overview of what's happening in that account. So on the top, you see all your CloudTrail activity. So all incoming CloudTrail activity locations, as well as what's happening with your AWS resources across this entire account. And below that, you see the status of all your AWS services. Just one quick point here, these dashboards are fully customizable, so you can move panels around as you like or add new panels if you choose to. Okay. So below the account, what we have are regions that this account that are being used in this account. And you can click on any one of these regions to get an overview of what's happening in that region. And this dashboard is essentially the same as the account level dashboard, but it's just specific to that region. Okay. And below the region, you'll see a list of AWS services that are being used in that region, right? So if I click on one of these services, like for example, EC2, I get a quick overview of all the aggregated data across all of my EC2 instances. I also have two panels here that help identify problematic machines. So instances with high CPU utilization or instances with high memory utilization. I can click any one of these honeycombs to then drill down into that specific instance and get to a set of dashboards that help me understand what's happening further, right? Debug the problem further. Similarly, we have an aggregated dashboard for application load balancers. So here again, I see a number of load balancers with high latency, and I can drill down into any one of these using the drill down capability that I was describing earlier. You can click on the load balancer and jump to dashboards that are specific to that load balancer instance. So one thing here I see when I open up the dashboard for this instance is there are a number of 500 response codes that there's a spike in the number of 500 response codes. And what that means is a server error or a system error. But basically my end users or customers see an error when they try to access my application, which is obviously not desirable. Now to debug this problem further, typically what I would do is figure out all the URLs associated with these 500 errors and map them to applications, EC2 machines, Lambda functions, look through the logs, and then understand what really happened or what the error was about, right? Instead, I can use the AWS Observability Root Cause Explorer add-on to determine if any downstream AWS services cause this spike in errors, okay? So let me, to do that, I'm going to jump to the region associated with this load balancer instance. And I can just directly navigate to that region through this AWS hierarchy. And the first thing I'm going to do is open up our events of interest dashboard. Okay, so this is the first dashboard that gives an entry into the AWS Observability Root Cause Explorer. And what you see here is a number of these three bubbles, and each of them represents an event of interest, which is essentially a deviation of CloudWatch metrics from the expected or normal values. So here I see there was a deviation in the number of 500 error codes as expected. That was the spike. And that drift from the expected value was around 765%. And that lasted for about 20 minutes. Okay. So I see two other bubbles here. To investigate further, I open this dashboard in the Root Cause Explorer interface. Okay. And when I open this dashboard, all of the context that I selected in the previous observability dashboard, all of that has come through as well. And what I see here on the right are top contributing entities. So it's basically calling out all these three entities that were these details of all these three events of interest or anomalies that occurred. So first of all, I see my load balancer error as we were talking about earlier, but I see the other two bubbles were related to EC2 host metrics, related to EC2 hosts, as well as to DynamoDB, okay? And now what I can do is investigate each of these further through this interface, right? So the first thing I'm gonna go ahead and do is click one of the bubbles. And this one is showing that there was the CPU load average CloudWatch metric drifted 978% from the norm for about 13 minutes, right? So this is a grouped metric, which means that it is grouping these anomalous events across a number of other EC2 hosts. So I see it's grouped it across 5 hosts. So it's aggregated all of those metrics. So it's all the same behavior across these 5 hosts, and it's aggregated all of them under this one indicator, okay? And if I look closely, this name over here indicates a load balancer target group, okay? And now moving on to the next bubble over here, moving on to the next DynamoDB bubble, I see this was a bottleneck caused on DynamoDB, a read throttle events bottleneck, And this CloudWatch metric drifted 1,000% from the normal or expected values for about 20 minutes. So all of these errors line up at approximately the same time. And now this is giving me an indication into why I saw that spike in my load balancer 500 errors to begin with, right? There's a problem with EC2 host machines that were part of a load balancer target group in terms of having high CPU utilization. And then a DynamoDB instance had had a deviation in read throttle events for that same time. So this is pointing me in that right direction. But now to investigate why this actually happened, I can use Sumo Logic metrics queries to get into the details, and I can see the spike here that I saw on the load balancer as well. And I can, to get to exactly why that happened on the DynamoDB database, I can go ahead and run a log search query. And here you'll see I'm using the same qualifiers, the region, the account, the namespace, and I'm looking for all errors or exceptions. Okay. When I run that query for that specified time, I can see what the problem was. And in this case, the problem is a user configuration error on that DynamoDB database. Okay. So what we've seen in this demo is essentially the ability for Sumo Logic to monitor all of your AWS accounts, regions, services through one hierarchy, one unified hierarchy in using the AWS Observability dashboards and the Sumo Logic Explorer framework. And we also saw how you can get to a root cause by using the root, how you can get to the root cause of a AWS service problem by debugging and correlating metrics across other AWS services with Root Cause Explorer. Okay. All right, so to summarize what we've learned so far, so AWS Control Tower, first of all, provides the framework for a multi-account AWS environment. And we learned that Sumo Logic can be set up to automatically collect key operational data from your AWS services. And finally, how you can use the Sumo Logic AWS Observability solution for unified visibility and to quickly get to the root cause of an incident. Okay. So in terms of next steps, we recommend, if you want to play with this integration, you set up a new AWS environment with AWS Control Tower. You can create a free Sumo Logic account if you don't already have one, and you can configure the integration between Control Tower and Sumo Logic AWS Observability. And then you can use the solution for visibility and root cause analysis. Okay. So thank you so much. And with that, let's just go into the questions.
Great. Thank you, Rishi and Sandeep, for that. We have a couple questions from the audience. One of them is, can this solution help with threat detection, and how might you address that?
Sure. So Sumo Logic already has an AWS threat intel app that detects all threats, incoming threats to your AWS environment, whether they're load balancers or from CloudTrail logs, using Sumo Logic's built-in threat intelligence product powered by CrowdStrike. So that's something that you would use. The solution specifically doesn't address that, but as we get more and more feedback from our customers, we'll continue to add that. But you have this app right now in the Sumo Logic app catalog that can help detect threats to your AWS observability environment.
Great, thank you. And another question that was asked was, can you speak a little bit about how the solution can be used to help with multi-cloud cost management?
Sure. So the solution itself is very AWS focused at this point, right? So it's all about monitoring AWS resources and monitoring CloudWatch logs, metrics, and CloudTrail logs. We are, with this, you can understand how you're using your resources. So that can kind of give you a clue into how to optimize, say, for example, your EC2 instances or your RDS instances and select the right instance type. So this doesn't address costs per se, but Sumo Logic as a whole, we're looking into different cost management solutions as part of our roadmap going forward.
Great. And then there was a final question I think we'll have time for. about just overall multi-account management, and if this helps with that.
Sure. Yeah. This solution is purely is perfectly aligned with multi-account observability. It's intended to observe operational and metrics across all of your AWS accounts, multiple accounts. And with this, having the ability to both visualize how this data across multiple accounts quickly through this intuitive navigation workflows, as well as the ability to search on data coming in from multi-accounts easily is a key factor, right? So you can search, as I was showing, both on your log data as well as on your metric data using the metadata enrichment that we're doing on each piece of data that's coming into Sumo Logic, right? So each piece of data is tagged with the account, region, namespace, and the instance. So you can search by those entities to get an overall picture, to get a picture of what's happening across your accounts. Okay.
Awesome. Thank you, Rishi.
Sure. Were there any other pending questions?
I believe all of them have been addressed.
Okay, I'll just pause for a short while to see if there are any other questions come up. Okay, all right. Thank you everybody for attending this webinar, and feel free to contact us if you have any other questions. All right, thank you so much.